Hello, we're going to go do Algebra 1, 2.3.3, literal equations. Um, kind of building upon what we've done in the last couple sections, literal equations is going to add really, it's not going to add anything. We're going to be doing the same steps that we've been doing. We're going to be using inverse operations to isolate a variable. We are going to combine like terms. Remember, like terms are determined by variable and exponent. So 2x and 3x we can combine to be 5x, but 2x and 4x squared are different terms, so we couldn't combine them with addition and subtraction. The big thing with this section is we have to accept and we have to be prepared for ugly answers. So let me go ahead and do this first equation for you. And again, I'm going to go ahead and use the checkup problems 2.3.2 and use examples from there. So that's where all these example problems are if you want to go back and look at them yourself. Um, So let's start with this. This is the first question on the checkup, and the instructions are to solve for y, not x, to solve for y. So my first step is to say I'm going to go ahead and draw my river. Now I'm going to ask what is on the same side, or what am I solving for? Well, I'm solving for y, and I'm going to ask what is on the same side as y. Well, the 3x and the 4 is on the same side as the y. All right. Now, what's the furthest away? The 3x. And what is it doing? Well, it's a positive and it's adding, so we're going to say it's adding. And how do you get rid of addition? We go ahead and we subtract. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 3x. That cancels. I can bring this 4y down. And now 17 minus 3x. 17 does not have an x term. It's a constant. It has no variable. So that tells me that these are not like terms. And if they are not like terms, we can't combine them. So I'm just going to write 17 minus 3x, just like that. And then what am I solving for? I'm solving for y. Well, what's with y? The 4. What's it doing is multiplying. How do you get rid of multiplication? You divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And I get y equals 17 minus 3x divided by 4. And this is my final answer. Notice that was ugly. It's not a single number. You don't get an x equals 4 here. You have y equals 17 minus 3x divided by 4. That's not exactly appealing or appetizing, but it's okay. Not every answer has to be pretty or has to be smooth or has to be even or an integer or anything like that. We're going to have variables in our answers, and that's okay. All right, so as long as we can accept that. Now I'll go to the next problem, which is number 3 on the checkup. Go ahead and draw my river. And I'm looking at this. The instructions are to solve for x. So I want to solve for x. So if I'm looking at this, I have an x on the left with a negative nx, and then I have an x on the right with 17nx. Now, with all of that, my first step is not what am I solving for. My first step is, do I have any like terms that I can combine? So I have an x on both sides, even though it's an nx. I need to combine those. So I ask myself, what's the biggest number? So I have a 17nx and I have a negative 1nx. I have a 1nx. Well, the 17 is bigger. So that means I want to bring everything to that 17nx, right? It's a positive 17. It's the biggest. I want to bring everything to it. So my first step is I'm going to add nx to both sides. That cancels this, right? Because it was subtracting, so I did the addition. So I have 9 equals, well, 17nx plus nx. Well, this is a 1, right? We don't normally write it, but it's a 1. So this is an 18nx. Now my question is, all my like terms are combined. And now what am I solving for? Well, I'm solving for x. What's on the same side as x? Well, it's the 18 and the n. And they're all multiplying, so I don't need to worry about what's furthest away because they're basically both connected and both at the same distance. So they're both multiplying x, and the way I get rid of multiplication is I divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 18n. And that cancels over here, and what I have is x equals, well, 9 divided by 18 is going to be 1/2. So 1 divided by 2n is my answer here. Again, it's not exactly a true, like, hey, x equals 7. But it's an acceptable answer for this section. This is what you're going to see more often than not. Now this is question 4. Start the same way. Throwing my river down. What am I solving for? I'm solving for x. There's no other x than this 12x. All right, so I'm solving for x. What's on the same side as x? The 12 and the k. What's the furthest thing away? Well, that'd be the k. And what is it doing? Well, it's adding. How do you get rid of addition? We subtract. So we have c minus k. Now, I ask myself again, what am I solving for? X. What's on the same side as x? The 12. What is that 12 doing? It's multiplying. How do you get rid of multiplication? You divide. I have to leave it as c minus k because they're not like terms. We don't know what they are. We have to leave them as is. And this is, again, my final answer, as ugly as it may be. All right, this next problem is question 5. And I'm going to draw my river. And now I need to look and see if there's any like terms I can combine. If I look at the left side, I have a 14n and a negative 6n. Well, those are like terms, and I can combine them to be, let's see, what, 8? All right. And then I have a p. I have two p's, one on the left side, one on the right side. So I need to get those together. Well, I have a 1p over here on the left, and I have a 16p on the right. Well, the 16's bigger, and I go ahead and look, and it's also positive. So it's bigger and positive. So I'm going to bring everything else to that 16. We're going to keep the 16 where it's at because it's the biggest and it's positive. If it was negative, we would move it, but it's the biggest and it's positive, so we're going to go ahead and keep it. So I subtract p from both sides. And 16p minus 1p is 15p. Now the instructions were to solve for n, so what are we solving for? N was on the same side as n. The 8, what is the 8 doing? Is multiplying. How do you get rid of multiplication? You divide. And so my final answer is going to be 15p divided by 8. Again, it's an ugly answer, but that's okay. All right, next question is question 9. And we are solving for c. So we're solving for c. It doesn't look like any variables have multiple terms. There's only one f and one c. And now we got to ask, what are we solving for? We're solving for c. What's on the same side as c? Well, the 9/5 and the 32. What's the furthest away from the c? Where we're going to say the 32 is. And what is it doing? It's adding. So we must subtract both sides by 32. All right, so I have f minus 32 equals 9/5 c. And so now what am I solving for? I'm solving for c. What is on the same side as c? Well, the 9/5 is. And what is the 9/5 doing? Okay. Now, the numerator, the 9, is multiplying. And the denominator, the 5, is dividing. How do you get rid of the 9 that's multiplying? Well, you would divide by 9. How do you get rid of the 5 that's dividing? Well, we would multiply it. So whenever we have a fraction that looks like this, that's set up like this, and we want to get rid of it, and do the inverse operations to get rid of it, I can just simply multiply by the reciprocal. And what is the reciprocal? It's just taking that fraction and multiplying and just switching the numerator and the denominator. So I took the 5 from the bottom, put it on top, 9 from the top, put it on bottom. And that cancels each piece. So what my answer is 5/9 times f minus 32 equals Celsius. So anytime I have this fraction, I'm just going to multiply the reciprocal, and that's just flipping the numerator and denominator. All right, the last one we're going to do is number 10, and the instructions are telling us to solve for height, which is h. So my first question is going to be, what's on the same side as h? Well, the pi and the r squared. And what are they doing? Well, they're both multiplying, so they're both together. Neither one is further than the other. So how do I get rid of multiplication? Well, I'm going to divide. So I divide both sides by the pi r squared. I take everything with me. So volume divided by pi times radius squared is equal to the height. So this section, Again, it's going to have a bunch of ugly numbers with ugly answers with a bunch of variables in there. There's not going to be just a finite singular number, and that's okay. All right, trust yourself, follow the same steps we've been doing, and you'll have a kind of an ugly answer like this, but you'll be perfect. You'll be okay.